The next tech hour is beginners, and we could talk about user experience, and perhaps we should talk about instant preview. I think it's probably time to do that again.
Instant preview would be very interesting. At least for me. I don't know if anybody else is interested in that, but in the environment we work in, students are paid to process textbooks through our software, either into Word XML or LaTeX or MathML. And each of those can be used in a different way to make math documents accessible to students who are blind or low vision or have a cognitive disability and so on. The problem comes up when they have to proof the accuracy of the conversion from our software. We have an editor, of course, but I wish there were a way that they could just line up the code on one side, the output on the other, scroll down through the output and compare it to the original document, see a mistake, go in and fix it and immediately see it fixed and move on to the next correction. Is anybody aware of anything that could do that?
I think you've asked the right question at the right place at the wrong time. I think you should ask it next week. And
okay.
I think you should be a special guest. So instant preview is definitely in it. And I wrote down what I've called accessibility preview. And I don't know if that's a concept that fits with you or the right word.
Sure, absolutely, yes.
Which means, for example, that see, if the person is visually impaired, so for example, screen reader.
Yes.
Now, I did some, when I was at the Open University, I did a bit of work along those lines because we used the design science tools.
Okay.
And the idea is that you want to preview the mathematics. Well, you don't, if the person's sighted, they probably want to preview the textual representation that is spoken.
That is exactly right. And that's what these volunteer or paid students do. They visually look at the output, and if it doesn't look the same, they know that some correction needs to be made.
How do they actually enter the text when they process the book? I'm not sure exactly what they do. Do they type it in or use some sort of GUI, or what do they do?
What we normally do is take e-born PDF files that were created initially, and then our software OCRs each page, and it isolates the math and the text and remembers where it was located. The text is OCR'd on, I mean, I'm talking about just from a PDF file. The text is OCR'd by an OCR text engine, but the math is OCR'd by two engines, different engines, and then can generate the underlying LaTeX or MathML that will render that equation. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm not...
But based only on the appearance in the PDF file. It's the type of OCR in essence.
Yes, based only on the appearance in the PDF file. And the e-born PDF files are of very high quality. So we scan a page at 600 dots per inch, and it's usually pretty accurate.
Yeah.
But
it's still expensive if works more or less, without many mistakes. I mean, OCR for text is, been around a long time, but for complicated math sounds much more challenging.
Yes.
Can I ask a question, Steve? Which is, these people, the students, the student workers, what's their sort of job title? What would you call them? They're accessibility assistants or something like that?
Yeah, Office of Student Disability Services.
Office of Student.
Office of Student Disability Services Professional. You could call them that, and some professionals can teach students how to use screen readers,
Right.
but others are dedicated to converting educational materials into accessible formats.
And most American universities would have an Office of Student Disability Services.
Oh, yes. And
Would
most
it be
of them,
most or all?
well, I don't know if all do,
Most.
but I can tell you we have thousands of customers, universities in the US using our software.
Okay, so there's thousands of customers.
Yes.
Right. So
is the text, Steve, exclusively in English, or do you deal with other languages, Spanish, Portuguese, French, German, and so on?
Well, if the character set, if the character set for the language, if it's a Romance language, it'll handle it. But for right to left languages, it wouldn't. It does handle Japanese because the software was developed by two Japanese mathematics professors. So I have not run the software to scan a large variety of languages. I wait for a customer to call us and say, hey, it didn't work for, Croatian. And then, of course, I know that it doesn't work for that language, but I'm not the mathematician and I'm not the technical person involved in the ecosystem. We're the business side of it, the marketing side of it. We take the orders, keep the books, things of that sort. So I'm not really answering your question.
Well, my principal concern was that although there are a great many languages that have alphabets based on the original Latin alphabet of 20 plus letters, most of them have accents, and the accents are absolutely critical for understanding of the word. And so it's important that an OCR engine be able to recognize the accents correctly. And although, for example, for French, there are 4 accents, German really uses they have one extra character, as said, and they have the so simply an umlaut. So essentially you need just that. But of course, words are moved from language to language and sometimes retain their accents, or if they move to English, usually lose them. But it's really important that the OCR engine be able to handle them correctly.
Well, what we did for many years was partner with Abby. And of course, their OCR engines are probably among the best. And we would have to buy, I think, 200 licenses for their OCR engine. And all we were using were their dictionaries. And we'd have to pay them quite a bit for, and we created an add-on to our software. So we were able to OCR math documents in any language because the OCR of the characters were accurate in any language. But the cost got so prohibitive that we weren't making any money. So we defaulted back to our own OCR engine. I can't tell you which OCR engines we use. We use 3, 2 for math, 1 for text, but it isn't as comprehensive as Abby was. But it's just, it wasn't self-sustainable as a business. So, you know,
I
was
was going to bring up Abby Feinreader because a colleague of mine had a large corpus of typewritten texts in Polish, the typewriting having been done in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, and he wanted to convert it. And he tried different products that purported to go from scans to editable text, and it was just impossible. But Abby Feinreader actually made it quite reasonable, and he had minimal editing requirements after that. And he was very pleased with it and has continued to use the product.
Yes, yes, Abby would not negotiate. We tried here in the US, we tried in Japan, and we'd have to pay a minimum of $25,000 up front just to get permission to distribute their OCR engine with our software, and it wasn't doable.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to come in on the Office of Student Disability Service Professionals. I think that's a really very, very, very important piece of local knowledge. I don't know that there's any similar uniformization, if you like, in the United Kingdom. I think it's much more, so to speak, homegrown, if you like, and whether it's good or bad, I don't know. But what's going through my mind is that any developments in the tech world that improve math accessibility will affect the lives of all these people in the Office of Student Disability Professionals, all the professionals there dealing with math content. And so, particularly in the United States, and the United States is, so to speak, such a large market, particularly everywhere, having contact with those people becomes really important.
we do. I established a LinkedIn group for Office of Student Disability Services Professionals, I think in 2008. Now, I don't know how many members the LinkedIn group has, and not all the members are employees of universities. But if you go to LinkedIn and search for Office of Student Disability Services Professionals, you could join the group, and I have the ability to send an email directly to every single member individually because I own the list. So if there are things that we could do to make their lives easier, that would be absolutely wonderful.
So that is fantastic, because otherwise it could take months and months and months to.
Yes.
So
yes.
So I had no idea there was such a role and such a group, and that you had such administrative powers on it. So
Yeah.
any project that's going to have you done things for MathJax and
Well, what we did back in 2011,
I'll tell you what, let's leave all of this for next week, and it goes into next week's recording. And next week's recording is, well, it's usability rather than beginners, right? And the focus is on the user is a professional in an Office of Student Disability Services somewhere. That's the user we're focused on, even if we don't know any, and even if we don't have any. That's who our target is. And can you pretend to be one of them for the purpose of the meeting?
Sure.
Excellent.
Absolutely.